Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the class. I still remain Prince Praise, your host for this class. So now, the last time we were talking, we talked about creating the database. Now, on the database, there, remember we only typed the username. When we clicked on new, we only typed the database name, and we clicked on create without creating any password. Neither did we create the database host or and the database username. So now back to our class. After installing the folder, we clicked on localhost slash the name of the folder. So right now, let's continue from here. Remember, we said welcome to WordPress. Before getting started, we need some information on the database. You will need to know the following items before proceeding. The first one here, the database name. Second one, the database username. The third one, the database password. And the fourth one, the database host. Now the fifth, the database prefix, which includes if you want to run more than one WordPress in a single database, etc., etc. So now, uh, one thing I always encourage developers to do is to always read in between the lines. I read through the lines to know what exactly you are doing, because there's something about programming. Programming changes every single day. A script changes. So if you don't read, you might assume that you already know the steps. You click, 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 and you end up messing up your work. So now let's click on let's go to take us to the next phase. Now, below, you should enter the database connection details. If you're not sure about this, contact your host. Now, remember, we're working on the localhost server, which is the localhost. We're working offline, entirely offline. Now, with this, you are the only one who have access to whatever you're doing. You're not on the public web or on the internet. You're just working offline. So right now, your database name. Remember, we created a database earlier, which is Prince Praise. Now, this Prince Praise here is my database name. So that right now I fixed in the Prince Praise there. Now remember, uh, the database is case sensitive. Now whatever you've used here should be exactly what you should type in here. No changes. Don't try to make your work look a little bit complicated, because complicated in the web development always messes up the job. So now the next thing you have to do here, your username. What is your username? Remember, we didn't create any username when we started this, when we created the database. Now, for a localhost server, the database is always referred as root. The database username, sorry, is always referred as root. Now, we put in the root there. Now, the reason why it's called root is because you are trying to communicate with the root folder, with the root settings of the database. Now it grants you root privilege. Now remember, in agriculture, I don't know much about agriculture, but let me just slate this here. Now, if you want to get to the depth or the origin of a plant, you're talking about the root, right? So now, before anything grows, it has to have a root. So now, before you grow your website, there must be a root. Before your database can stand, there must be a root. That is why we're working with the root there. Now we move to password. Now, for the password, we didn't create any password, so we have to leave this totally blank. Now, the database host, which all we're working with the local host, like we right stated here, working with the local host, so we'll leave it that way. And the table prefix, it's on WP, which is WordPress. So all these parameters are okay. And if we're having any error, any mistake in any of these, if we click on submit, it's not going to take us to the next phase. It's going to tell us to correct the errors and other errors before we get there. So right now, what we're going to do is to click on submit. Now we've clicked on submit, and to show that our parameters are okay, it tells us, all right, Sparkly, you've made it through this part of the installation. WordPress can now communicate with your database. If you're ready, time now to run the installation. So now this is very, very easy. This is one of the fun part when working with WordPress offline. Now, the WordPress online won't give you all this privilege to have access to all these features. Reason because they manage everything for you. But right now, you are the one in charge of whatever you're doing here. This is your space. This is your world. You have the ability to create anything out of the as long as you can imagine it, you can think it, you can create it. So now what we do right now is to run the installation. Now I've clicked to run the installation. It's taking us to a different page entirely. Remember, we're still working totally offline. We're not working online, we're working totally offline. So right now, when we clicked on the run installation, it brought us to a new page. It says, welcome to the famous 5-minute WordPress installation process. Just fill the information below and you'll be on your way to using the most extendable and powerful personal publishing platform in the world. Now, when they say extendable and powerful, I've tested of this WordPress for over 15 years now, and is exceptionally marvelous to work with. Trust me, I've worked with a love and love and love of web developing tools or web developing engines, but this actually is actually the best and the most powerful so far. So now from this section here, this is where you can now manipulate things the way you want. Now remember, our database can have a different name and our site title can have a different name. Now it's advisable to make it different because now for hackers, for we site penetrators and testers, the first thing we try to guess when hacking a website is to try to peg the truth through the database. Now, if we're able to get access to the database using the site name, mean that your site is totally vulnerable. Now, you have to, in order for you to make your site hack proof, you give it a different name to mislead every intruder. Now, let me give it a different name. Let me give it Proof IT Ghana Limited. And username, I can give it any username. Let me give it what's my favorite activities. Let me say programming. Programming. Okay, programming. Now my username I use there is programming. Now for the sake of this tutorial, I just want to use, for the password, I just want to use something weak, something different. Okay, now remember, now if you notice here, it told me very, very weak password. So now, in order for you to have a strong password, it has to have a combination of characters, alpha characters, lower characters, and other numbers, and also symbol. And let me decide to use a full stop at the end, and also come back here. Now if you notice, this password is extremely strong. Now people would not easily want to guess this password because it is proof. It is a soundproof password. It's a hack proof password, sorry. So now let me just give it something simple so that I can be able to manipulate later. Let me confirm the user weak password, and I decide to use, and now they ask me for an email. So now let me give it an email address, praise at gmail.com. Now, this part here is one of the part that always interests me. Now it says search engine visibility. Now if you check on this box, you are discouraging search engines from indexing this site. It is up to search engines to honor this site. Now when it means search engines, it says search engines, example of search engine is Google, you have Bing, and all those other search engines. Now if you leave this box unchecked, mean that anybody that searches on Google, on Bing, on Yahoo will definitely find your site. But if you check this box this way, it means that you are discouraging search engine from indexing your site, from bringing your site to the top of the search engine. Are we getting it? So now I love my site being made popular. Let everybody see my site so that I can make money. So right now I leave it unchecked and I click on install WordPress. Now this process is going on. It's going to try to install the WordPress for me, and within a few seconds, let's say roughly 30 to 1 minute, it's going to run the installation for me, and boom, I would be on my way to start editing and adjusting my site features to have a wonderful and wonderful website. Now, this is just the stressy part of it. From the installation to this aspect, that the stressed part of all this job. Now, if you notice here, it says success. WordPress has been installed. Thank you and enjoy. Now, my username is there. My password is my choosing password, and I can decide to hit login, or and now it's giving me an option to save my password. All I do is just to save, so that in case